Hey folks, Jason Dukes here with Dirt Race Life. If you've been looking for information on how to finish out the tubing in your center section so that you get that good strength you're after without adding too much weight, this is your episode. We're going to put tubes, and more tubes in all the right places and all the right thicknesses. So if you like tubing, smash that like button. Wait a minute, smash the like button anyway. All right, y'all stick around. So just a quick rundown on the plan and how I come up with this. Of course, this is masking tape that I've got where I've just mocked everything up, made sure it was making sense and it wasn't anything in conflict. And here's what's going on. These two outside tubes right here, we knew we needed those. That was mandatory for them to be here. But as far as the inside tubes, I was looking at this from the standpoint of on the front, I knew I needed something because on the rear here, I've got this tube that runs across to this corner right here, and that splits this into triangles, and it can stop any type of a twisting effect where that the whole roll cage gets folded over towards one side. And so that takes care of that. We need to have that same type of a structural strength in the front. And for that reason, we decided to put a tube running down through here. It's far enough in front of and way above where my legs are going to be. It's not going to be a problem. Then the other one is twofold. So I need to support this down leg for the main cage coming down right here, going to this tube. If we rolled this over, this top halo took a hard hit and a rollover, it would just bend this tube down. And so that needed to be supported. And we're going to take and we're going to run from the center up, and then we're going to take it and extend on down into this front corner. And so we're creating triangles also front to back as far as any twisting effect that could happen. So we're creating the strength in the cage like that, but then also we're creating some structure here in case we take a hard hit on the top of the halo down. Now, for this tube in the front and these two tubes right here, 1.5 inch 0.65 thickness is all we're going to use. These aren't going to be impacted. They're inside of our structure, and the strength that we're looking for is an extension and contraction is the strength structure we're looking for, not in bend. So I have no issue using 0.65 for this. Let's keep it light. That's a lot lighter weight tubing than the rest of this structure, which is 0.95. Now these two outside tubes right here, we got a main one that goes across right here, and then we're going to split and make our triangles right here. These are structural. These need to be structural from an impact standpoint, and so we're going to use 0.95 diameter or 1.5 inch diameter 0.95 thickness tubing for these two pieces because they're part of our safety system in case we take a big intrusion in from the passenger side. So with that said, let's get busy. So first one I put in is right across here. This first one burned in. Okay, my next tube that I'm going to put in here, this is 1.5 inch 0.65 that is going in. It's the strut piece inside of the cage running diagonally from the true center right here up to this extra leg we have, this safety leg coming down on the front right here joining in. Now the way that I do this to get this fit up, I cut this about 2 inches long, and then I turn around and I cut out I notched it for this end first. So I've got a cross right here that I need to notch this in. And so if you've got a joint you're trying to have a third or fourth tube come into, do that one first. And so because it's kind of a weird, it's got 4 different notches basically cut into it. And with these, what I did is stuck the tube up there, took a magic marker and started marking where I wanted to start relieving, and then just took a flat disc and worked it down. And it's difficult because it would be simple if you were just plugging straight into it, you know, perpendicular, well, that would be fairly straightforward, but you're not, because this is running at a diagonal out from, you know, behind my seat out toward the right side of the car. And so for that reason, the whole thing's on an angle. So whole tube long, I just take the top and lay across where it's going to go, and then just work it down. And see, then once that's exactly like it's going to be, well, this is a much simpler cut where I'm just cutting back, you know, 1 notch on each side. So I can take and mark that, come back a 1/2 inch, you know, on an 1.5 inch pipe. Not a problem at all. Then I can get my fit up right. And the nice thing about it is, you know, once I get this one right, I can be long and then just work my way down until this one just drops right into place. So that's the way I do these. So this is 1.5 inch 0.65. Let's get this one stuck in next. I don't want to drive these tubes in. I want all this stuff to fit, you know, just fit, not interference fit. You know, I don't want to create a bunch of tension in this cage anywhere. All right, next tube. Again, this one inside the cage, just 1.5 inch 0.65. I'm not depending on this to be like a crash bar to take impact. And so, you know, be very specific about where you use like a 0.83 and an 0.65 versus thicker, you know, walls that would be appropriate to protect you, you know, directly from crash impact. This one right here, mouthed it, took a little notch out the bottom because the other tube there it's going to overlap with it. It's nearly a straight cut. It's going to go onto my plate right here that my 2 tubes are tied through, and we're going to get her welded up right quick. She's just going to sit just like that right there. And that just sits perfect. Let me just make sure she's right where she's supposed to be. This next tube, 1.5 inch 0.95, this one's got to be right. It needs to have great joints, and it needs to be exactly level and correct. Because our top deck, we're going to use it as a reference point. We get our car bent up, this is going to be a reference point for the car, so we want to make sure it's exactly where it's supposed to be. I've got it cut and mouthed. I've got it just a little bit of interference fit, but it's not stretching the cage. It'll wiggle and move around. And set a level on it, and I'm going to level one end, make sure it's sitting level, and then I'll spot one end, and then I'll check the other end. Let's see if we can get this one just exactly where we want. On this last tube right here, I had originally mocked this up with masking tape, and I had pulled that tape across in this direction. And I was looking at that, and I'd already shot the scene and everything, and that's just to show you how easy it is to get turned around on this stuff. Because I was checking my notes and I was checking my sketches, and that tube does not go across there. It goes this way across here. And I wanted to talk about this just for a second, because it might be intuitive to think that the stronger way to do this would be this way, with this triangle running right over here on the front like this. And it's not. As far as strength goes, whether I cut this into 2 triangles this way or this way is the same strength for these 5 tubes. These 5 tubes are just as strong one way as the other. That's not the issue. What it is that this corner already has an intersection of 5 tubes. It's as strong as it's going to be. And this corner already has an intersection of 5 tubes. It's as strong as it's going to be. But these 2 corners have an intersection of 3 tubes. And so they're the weaker intersections And so I want to have this tube coming into these because I want to spread this out. I want all my intersections to be, you know, as strong as they can be, and making this space frame cage at the same time. And so for that reason, this needs to go this way. And I was going to show, this is 2 inside corners. This corner is a little bit less than 90. That's because this cage lays back 5 degrees right here. All right, so we've got an 85-degree corner right here, and then that's a true 90 right there on the front because that's a straight upright. So I want to cut, as far as my fit up goes, on my tube insertion, this tighter corner is going to be the one that I'm going to go into, and then I'm going to push it into the wider corner. And so I cut 2 45s right here, and then I took a 2-inch flap disc and took them on down really tight. Got a real good fit up on that one. Right there is what we was after. And so once we got that good fit up there, then we can hold the tube beside it, take a marker and mark it. And this one is fairly straightforward and easy. Because I have this tube coming out, I'm not wrapping around this back side, I'm welding to this tube. So what that allowed me to do was allowed me to take one mouth edge off lower than the other. Makes it a lot easier for me to insert this tube. I don't have to bend it back because of running a lower mouth on one side. And then I cut a fat, wider mouth that's going to give me a lot more leeway on getting the tube in by having this one cut deep and very well and tight. It's going to let me to be able to get up into that one corner and get this to pop in, and gives me some room where that this can level out and I can weld it up without having a large gap on either end. Because by this having a really tight mouth on it, this thing can slide back and forth 1/8 of an inch, and it doesn't create a gap around it. And I'll show that here. Because I can just put this in, put it in that corner, and it's in. Remember, when we're if you've got inside corners and you're inserting a tube in, you want to make sure that you trim until your tube will fit. You want your tube to be able to rattle or wiggle. You do not want to drive it in with a hammer or something and it create wedge in your cage. Don't do that because it creates a stressor. And then what happens is you get in some wrecks, or you get some stuff bent up a little bit, and wherever that pressure was at, it's going to deform the cage. The first chance it gets that it can push that apart, it's going to push that apart. It's going to get everything a little bit out of square. What we can do here is I'm going to show you is I'm going to pull that into that corner and put a spot on it, and then I'm going to show you that how much room around that weld we've got there, because you don't want a big gap, but if you do this right, you won't have a big gap. I'm not going to set it completely into this corner, and I'm going to set it up there right neutrally in the middle of where it should be. I want to just even this out where I'm the same on both ends. So I'm just going to make sure I'm using my thumbs just to make sure it's sitting right in the center. Get it right where I want it. There we go. All right. So got it held in place here. Alright, let me show y'all. You don't really have a gap. You're right up against all the way around. Won't be a problem at all. You can see you're fine on your fit up. You got good metal here to weld into. So we've got all of our lower tubing that we added complete at this point. Hopefully on this shot you can see this extra leg I have in the front here for safety. You see how this tube is coming in and supporting it. That's what I was talking about. If these weren't here and we took a really hard hit in the front, it's just going to push this tube, this front bar, and everything is just going to be pushed down. And so that's the reason these two 065s are right here. Now for the upper, I think a Newman bar is really appropriate for this design. And the reason being is that I'm a really large guy. I wanted to build a car cage that I felt really safe in. If the car flipped over on its lid, I don't want to be dependent on someone else having to get the car turned over or get me out because I can't do it. And for those reasons, that's been a concern of mine. And I said, well, I want to have as tall a cage as I can. This cage is right up against where the roof is going to be. It totally maxes out the height of the car. That actually does help from an aerodynamic standpoint, the way I'm designing my car, but it is, the primary purpose of it is for my safety. The trade-off there is that as this roll cage gets taller, then the strength of this tubing is going down. And the reason for that is because if you start turning this car over, rolling this car violently on the track, as those tubes are getting longer and longer, impacts on this roll cage up here are going to be able to bend this halo around easier. And as it's shorter, it's stronger. And so for that reason as well, I think it would be appropriate for me to tie in a second set of tubes across here. Also, the opening itself on the front is so large, I'm going to close that down. And of course, I'm also going to have, you know, a screen in front as well that'll be pretty significant tubing. I'll probably use like 3/8 tubing for the screen itself on the front. But Newman bar. But the thickness of these bars right here I'm going with is 0.65. So this is DOM, 1.5 0.95 thickness for all my main roll cage. This is my main structure here. This backup tubing, just 0.65. Weight is a concern as you start adding more and more tubing, especially on the front half of the car. You really have to start paying attention to where you use it, what thicknesses, and be strategic about that. Now, for me, the way I'm designing this car, it meets my safety criteria. An important point, your safety is your responsibility. So as you're building, you do the research, make sure that you're picking the appropriate thicknesses and sizes of tubing where you need to. So this is just my design for what I'm comfortable with. So let's get to that. Let's get this joker in here. That's on 6-inch center, right there. Let's get this side one right here in. Rough it out, and then shape it up. Get this diagonal in the rear here. There we go. Already fit up and ready to go. So we're putting a small piece in. This has been turned. I put this 90 in and then cut it back to match this corner around. And we're going to drop this in right here. My helmet, so my full containment seat, the upper part of my full containment seat around my helmet is right in here, and then the top of my head's right here, so I want this tube to be right in here. Kind of, it's a little bit below what the halfway point is, but I want it to be right there at the side of my helmet. Of course, it doesn't obstruct vision because my face shield where I'm looking out is up in here, not back here, so it's just a safety tube. Right there. Now this is a piece of 0.95 right here. And we'll put a level on it and set it to 0. You sit right there and be good for me. That completes our center section for the roll cage in its entirety. The only other stuff that's going in is just as far as bracing for the deck and the rest of the cockpit aluminum, stuff like that. And then like when we run the steering wheel up through there, the bracing that we do for it. That's going to come in future videos as well. Coming up next for this car, the rear end. It's on shipment. They're telling me that they're building it now. It's going to be here in about a week or two. So hopefully my next episode, we're going to get our rear end swung. That's going to let us go ahead and get our rear bracing in place. We're going to wait. We're not going to do our bracing until after we hang our rear end. That way we just got some more room while we're working on it and videoing and stuff. Then the fuel tank's going in. I've already received my new fuel tank. It is not going where you might think it's going to go. It's going somewhere else as far as location. And I've got good evidence for the case of why I'm moving it. So you're definitely going to want to see that one. I really appreciate y'all. Shout out to Darren. He joined our sponsorship club. Really appreciate that, Darren. Definitely making a difference for the channel. And hey, if you haven't subscribed, y'all subscribe. This is good stuff. Thank y'all.